Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marije Gould. I am the VP of Marketing for Verint Systems. We are the customer engagement company, and we help organizations with their customer engagement strategies with our software and our services. Today, we're going to talk about a reflection on customer service and work. Oh, let me see. Oh, there we go. First of all, I just want to pose you all a question. I realize you can't answer me online, but will robots take over our jobs? Are you worried that robots will take over your jobs, or maybe the jobs of your children, and there'll be less jobs for all of us in future? Cambridge University thinks, or 4 years ago, they thought that actually 47% of jobs would disappear through the rise of artificial intelligence and bots. Quite a gloomy picture. OECD this year, so the OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, they said that that was probably more in the area of 14%, and that jobs with or countries with high trained workers, such as Northern Europe, for instance, would be less impacted than countries where there was more lower skilled work, such as Eastern Europe, or think of Mexico or India. So 14% doesn't sound so bad, but actually in the OECD countries, 32 countries, that would mean 66 million jobs would disappear. Now, I tend to take this with a pinch of salt, because just think about your organizations. How many jobs have we actually created? There are more than 500,000 Salesforce administrators in the world now, and they weren't there 15 or 20 years ago. So we wanted to look a little bit more at how this is developing, and how the rise of artificial intelligence and bots is changing customer service, but also how it's changing the workplace. We do annual research on a global scale. I'm the executive sponsor of these researches. So last year we looked at the digital tipping point, really looking at what do consumers want, and they really showed us and told us that they wanted a human touch in today's digital world. This year's research looks at the future of customer service and work, and we've taken some of the trends from previous years' research and have taken those into the next 10 years to try and paint a picture of what it's going to look like. I think we all see that there's artificial intelligence, and bots are here, and they're here to stay. And we have to use AI and bots to compete in today's world, and to even compete tomorrow. So the customer experience is really changing with this changes in technology. But is this all really desirable? What we saw last year is that the digital customer, so the customer who's happy to engage through digital platforms and self-service platforms, they're actually much less loyal. And on the flip side, the employees, they feel threatened by the rise of the bots. So how does this kind of all balance out? We need the efficiencies of the robots, but that human touch is really important. So my take on this is we need to use technology where it's possible and where it's desirable. We don't need to use it just because we can use it. People are better at a lot of things than robots. They have emotional intelligence. Bots don't have this. So in this research, we wanted to identify and research and look into these themes. And what we did is, this year we looked at 18 countries, 36,000 consumers were surveyed, but we also enlisted the help of a futurologist. This was Professor James Woodhuysen from the London South Bank University. He's a physicist professor, but he's a physics professor rather. But he has been a futurologist for many years, and his predictions have been quite accurate. So we enlisted his help with the development of the research, looking at the key themes, but also with the analysis. So what I'd like to do over the next 20 minutes or so is take you through some of these themes. So first of all, we're going to look at customer service, the future of customer service and loyalty, and what drives customer loyalty. Second of all, we're going to look at what customer expectations are. And thirdly, we're going to look at the future of work and the impact of technology. So let's just dive straight into it. So loyalty is on the decline. We have done these global researches for years now, and we've been asking some of the same questions every year. So we've asked people, how long on average have you been with your service provider? So a service provider could be your bank, your insurance company, your mobile phone company, your utility company. And on average, 3 years ago, it was 61%. This year, it had dropped to 50%, and we've seen a steady decline. And this is on the decline. I think it's going to continue to go. And if you look at this trend line, it's quite a worrying factor. So where is this happening? Is it happening across all sectors? So to some degree, yes. So here you can see in blue where customers have been with a company or an organization for more than 3 years, then in green 2 years ago, and in orange this year. And you can look at the various verticals here. So the one I would say that's been hardest hit is probably the insurance industry. That's seen a real decline. There's greater consumer choice. Consumers are very empowered, and they're switching maybe because of better pricing, maybe because of better service, but it's easier to switch and people shop around. But even the more traditional industries like banking, we see quite a big decline. It's dropped to below 70%. So to keep your customer base steady, you have to replace that almost 30% of those customers, and that's very expensive. I think what's also interesting is when you look at the more the newer industries, for instance, like online retail, it actually never got above 40%, really. So the question is, will the other industries eventually level out at that same level, or will it drop? But there's definitely different trends in different industries, but everywhere we see a decline. So if it's not any specific industry, is it maybe a specific age? Are those millennials and Generation Z kids that have no loyalty to anyone but themselves and their peers, are they the ones that causing this? Well, actually not. Well, I'm gonna rephrase that, not just that them. So you can see here the Generation Z and the millennials, so up to 34, they are actually much less loyal than the older generations, and even with them the loyalty is on the decline. But look at the older generations, everywhere the empowered customer is choosing to change if they don't like something about their provider. So don't just think that it's the millennials that are causing us this heartache and headache. It's all the generations that caused this. So what we wanted to find out is, what's driving that drop in loyalty, and what are the key drivers when consumers actually do purchase goods and services. Now, we identified 5 key drivers. I think the 2 obvious ones are products and price. If you don't have that, then you have a no-starter. So you have to have a competitive product that's desirable to the consumer. But the problem is everyone can always bring out the same product or a product cheaper and better. It's just a leapfrogging of product development. So the third big factor is customer experience. So when selecting a provider, consumers are saying customer experience, on average, around 80% of the consumers feel that this is a major factor or the only deciding factor for them when they choose a provider. However, here's the challenge: 65% believes customer service is not necessarily up to speed. It could be faster, more intuitive, particularly when it comes to online customer service and mobile devices. And we've all probably experienced that when the app that you're using crashes, or the website doesn't respond, or you have to wait for 20 minutes for an agent to be available on web chat. So there's some room for improvement there. And I think also 68% of the consumers, they feel it should be easier to just resolve a query without having to call someone or go into the store. I have an online subscription to the Times newspaper, which I wanted to cancel. I managed to buy it online very, very quickly. Do you think I could cancel it online? Of course not. I had to call the call center and had to wait in a queue, and I got the upsell, and it took forever. And that's just my experience. I'm sure you all have similar experiences with your providers. The fourth reason that we see influences consumer behavior is the ethics of a business. So the ethical consumer is really here. People are looking at the way companies behave when they're making a purchasing decision. It's not just that they want a product, they want to buy a product from a company that they can identify with, that pays their taxes, that looks after the environment. Again, this is something that you see across all ages. I think the younger generation is really, they feel very strongly about this. They want to change the world. They want to make it a better place. And 20% says this is like the only deciding factor. If they don't get this right, I'm never going to buy the products or services. But across all generations, again, it's in the high 60%, even going up to 70%. So gone are the days where you had people protesting in the streets, Greenpeace going around on the North Sea with little speedboats trying to raise awareness of how companies were behaving. Now it's plastered everywhere. You make a mistake, it's not just in the traditional media, it gets amplified by social media. Think about the issues that we're seeing with the gender pay gap, women getting paid much less for doing the same job as a man. The Volkswagen disaster with the emissions is still hurting them. And it's more than just the financial loss, it's a reputational loss that on the long run has a really big impact on the brand. Oxfam, I was reading an article in the newspaper this weekend. They're having to restructure their entire organization, which does such fantastic things in the world, but they've had people working for them who misbehaved and took advantage of people, and people don't want to donate to this charity anymore, and it's bringing the organization to its knees. And finally, I think we're all familiar with the Me Too campaign, and there's so many other reasons why people are not choosing to buy from certain companies. It can be reasons, like I said, like the environment or employee work conditions is another one. It's all coming out in the news. People are much more empowered to talk about this, and if you make a misstep, customers will punish you for it. But there's another area that's really emerged, and I think we've all got GDPR firmly etched into our minds. The skeptical consumer is the one that really states a high level of consideration into how you treat, or how we all treat, our customers' data. And they want to trust us with their data. And in fact, many of them, more than half, say they would never engage with a brand that has experienced a data hack. Now, to be honest, I don't think people know how many companies have suffered data hacks. We've had hospitals, traditional retailers, banks, email providers, you name it. There's been so many data hacks everywhere, some with a much bigger impact than others. But choosing your provider is a really big issue when you start looking at data, because we have more and more data on our customers. And just think of these few examples that we've seen over the past few years. PlayStation is a long time ago, but suddenly all your kids' data they were all online gaming, and their data was hacked. A company like Under Armour, you could think, what data do they hold on their customers? It's just a clothing brand. Well, they've had a massive data hack, and it's going to cost them dearly. Currys PC World, large retailer, happened last week. I heard figures of £40 million in fines, but that's not the only issue. The biggest worry is, will their customers actually still walk through the doors and trust them with their bank details, their credit card details, and other personal details? So it's not just the Ubers or the Facebooks or the LinkedIn that gets hacked. It's all industries, whether they're traditional industries, retailers, manufacturers, all at risk. And the consumers really worry about this. They want to know how secure their personal information is. 71% worry about the amount of personal information we all hold on them. And only 50% or so trust organizations to use their data ethically. That's huge. Half of our customers don't think that we will use their data ethically. And 39% only thinks that we do enough to protect their data. Now, we all obviously are getting forced to protect our customer data much more with GDPR coming into place last month. So that does change things. And what we saw in the research is in the countries where the data protection has been more firmly enshrined into national laws or international laws, like in the European Union, consumers are more trusting. In countries where there's very little legislations around how we protect their data, consumers are much more worried. So GDPR is actually a great thing because it does put the consumer's mind at ease. And there is a bit of a contradiction. If you look on the left-hand side here, I like it when service is personalized to me and my interests. We saw that decline over the past year. It was in the mid-70% about 2 years ago, and now it's 68%. I think that people are realizing how much data you have to hold on them to personalize service and marketing to them. I think they're waking up to this, and this was before the Cambridge Analytica and Facebook scandal. We did the research at the beginning of January this year, and that obviously broke weeks later. I think if we would do this survey again, we might get even higher percentages of concerned customers. So we looked at, we discussed price, products, customer experience, ethical consumer, the skeptical consumer. So given all this, and by the way, this is Professor James Woodhuysen, who obviously he couldn't be here today. I have done a webinar together with him as well. We wrote a white paper together on this. But when we discussed this, we were looking at, is the future of customer service really about loyalty? I think there is no loyalty. I think loyalty is dead. I think the future of customer service is about not slipping up. It's about doing the right thing all the time, every time. Because if you do slip up, the customers will vote with their wallet and they will go elsewhere to someone who better meets their needs or better fits with their personal preferences. So I think the concept of loyalty is a misnomer, and I think we can't expect our customers to be loyal despite everything we do. We need to earn that. So let's take a step now to the piece around customer service and consumer communication preferences. And this touches very much on the customer experience side of things. So what do people want from all of us, from you as organizations, delivering products and services to them? We asked them about preferred communication channels. We didn't just say, how do you want to communicate with an organization? We actually said, what is your preferred communication to change account details? And you can see here a comparison between 2018 and 2016. So in 2018, people are kind of woken up that they can actually do a lot online themselves. They can use web self-service, they can use mobile apps. So way over 50% of the people are perfectly happy to do that themselves. They don't necessarily need to speak to someone in person. By the way, it's not all the millennials that said that they would be quite happy to do it themselves. These are inexperienced people who have not dealt with organizations a lot. So often they will actually like to speak to someone because they can guide them through the process. So again, don't be misguided into thinking that they're just the digital consumers. They're not. They know when they need help and they will ask for it. But you can see here, it's very straightforward, simple thing. I can do this myself. What if I have a complaint and I want to contact an organization? Well, this changes the picture a bit. Speak to someone on the phone has actually increased over the past couple of years, as has speak to someone in person. People also like email, SMS, and I get that because you have a trail, you know when you sent it, it's in your outbox and you can refer back to it. So people seem to be getting the hang of what they need to do in order to get their desired outcomes. They know to speak to you on the phone if they need to do a certain thing, or if they want to bend your ear because they're really unhappy. They just need to offload, and they're emotional, and they want someone just to say to them that they understand them and they will do their best for them. But when it's simple stuff, they can do it themselves. What also interested me was that live chat is less popular in both scenarios, actually, than it was a few years ago. I think this might be a bit of a result of bad implementation of omni-channel or bad omni-channel strategy. We've seen a lot of companies adding more and more channels to communicate to their customers, but they haven't joined up the dots, they haven't connected it up. So you're on a live chat, and then you want to speak to someone in person, and you have to start from scratch again. You've had to wait for live chat. I was transferred 8 times in one live chat to different agents. Those kind of experiences completely put you off that channel. So I think we are responsible for making sure that when we do implement new channels, that we do it in a correct way, that we make sure it's integrated with our other communication channels, so that we can help the customers in their desired way. So that there was actually, let me just flick back, there were some mentions of artificial intelligence and personal assistance, particularly with when people were happy to do some self-service. And we see that much more. We see kind of the bots online, the chat bots helping us, also of course on the phone. And I think it's getting harder, and Professor James actually thinks it will be almost maybe impossible in 2030 to determine whether you're speaking to a human or a machine. But when you do talk to a person, actually, it's even more important that they deliver the right levels of service, and that they show compassion and emotional intelligence, and that they can help them there and then. One of the challenges that keeps cropping up when I speak to our customers or large organizations is, the contact center, where they're getting many more complex inquiries now from customers. The self-service has taken away a lot of the simple questions, and yet the contact center agents are probably the lowest paid people in the organization, and they're at the coal face dealing with customers, and they're expected to deliver this fantastic customer service on a minimum wage. Kind of a bit the wrong way around, I think, and a lot of our customers are kind of rethinking about how they are actually dealing with this, because with the low wages also comes a high churn in staff, which is expensive too. So I think we might have to kind of rethink a little bit how we staff the contact center, how we develop the agents, the tools we make available to them, so that they can actually help the consumers. So let's take a step now to the third topic, and that's the evolution of work and service. So automation is here, and tasks and processes are being automated. It helps people do their jobs more effectively, but people are worried that robots are going to take over their jobs. On the flip side, what we've seen in the research is that the consumers and the workers expect that workplaces will be more flexible to suit their preferences. And this is nothing new. So this is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. A movie was out a few years ago. The book was actually written in 1963 by Roald Dahl. And Charlie's dad lost his job in the toothpaste factory when he was screwing up the caps on the toothpaste day in, day out. And he lost his job to a robot. It was easily automated. This obviously, was happening everywhere since the agricultural and industrial revolution. We've seen robots and machines take over from people. Now we have artificial intelligence that will be added too, but it's not the same as a person. And by the way, at the end of the book, Charlie's dad gets his job back because the machines break down and they need someone to repair it. So the whole AI and bot story, I don't think is as new as we might think it is, and as it's being portrayed in the media. But when we asked people, again, of all ages, and here you can see people in all ages in blue, and the millennials, or the Generation Z, actually in green. So they are seeing that computerized processes are being used in the workplace. More than half of them are seeing it. And they're also seeing that it's replacing and augmenting manual labor. And tasks and processes are increasingly being automated by technology. So they're all witnessing this. They also think it helps them do their jobs more effectively and more flexibly. And the millennials are a bit more, or the Generation Z is a bit more positive here about this, even though their jobs might be most at risk, or the OECD thinks that their jobs are most at risk because they're at an entry-level job and those are easier to be replaced by bots. But they're really all quite upbeat about what it might bring them in terms of a better workplace. But 52% of Generation Z thinks, I worry that AI will take over my jobs in the next 10 years. That's a very high percentage. On average, it's a bit lower, and like I said, I think that's a bit more realistic. If you then marry this up with customers' wants, so customers want human contact to remain a part of customer service. They worry, 68% worry that they'll be misunderstood by fully automated services. My dad was talking to a chatbot and he didn't understand why, when he asked the same question 5 times, he was getting the same answer 5 times, because that wouldn't happen with the person. He thought there was another person typing in the answers, and then he realized that obviously that wasn't the case, and he had to retransfer to a person. But 63% of people are actually very happy to be served by a chatbot, as long as they know, and as long as they have an option to escalate the conversation to a human being when they actually need to speak to someone and when they're not getting anywhere. So this all marries up very nicely, and we're seeing those bots coming into our industry. And when I talked to James about that, I think that the biggest thing is robots and AI, they don't have emotional intelligence. I don't know if you remember Tay, the Microsoft robot, and she turned into a fascist, misogynistic, woman-hating, racist, spouting robot after 3 days of taking in all this information that was being thrown at her from all over the world, all over the internet. Microsoft had to take her offline. That self-learning thing is only really good when you put the right kind of information into it. Robots, they're not good at deciding what's right or wrong, or and make ethical judgment or aesthetic judgment, what's beautiful. They struggle to deal with cultural differences. This is why you need the emotional intelligence of a human. They can do a lot of things very well. They can do simple rules-based games. A robot will always beat a human being at chess because it can create all the algorithms, and it's a very rules-based environment. They can't necessarily drive cars that well, or not yet at the moment, and the whole self-driving car project was stopped when there was one fatality in Arizona a few months ago. Even though we all have fatalities on the road all the time, we're not prepared for computers to make those mistakes. And the problem with the traffic and where we all sharing the roads is people don't stick to the rules. So as long as people stick to the rules and no children run out in front of the streets and people don't run through red lights, it's fine. But this is not the reality we live in, and not the reality that we're bringing bots into. 2 examples here what really surprised me. So Amazon is using more than 100,000 robots in their fulfillment centers, and they do a lot of the heavy lifting, literally, which is great. They had a spill of butter, of liquid butter, that in America they put it on their popcorn, and it was, the whole plant was basically ceased to work because of this tiny spill. On the flip side, the Max Planck Institute did a research into hugs from a robot, and actually people rated it better than the real thing. They give better hugs because they're not just judging you when you hug them, and they're not too clingy. And people actually felt more positive about the robot after they gave it a hug, or they got a hug from it. So robots are coming into places. Apparently they make better doctors in terms of analyzing your problem. But once again, are we willing to let them make mistakes like we are with humans? So this research has really shown us that technology is key to our future success of organizations, but the human touch and the balance between how we manage technology and the emotional intelligence and the human touch, I think, will determine our success. So we've got 6 very quick recommendations, some takeaways here. So first of all, only humans can provide the human touch. I think I've labored it enough in the past few slides. The human element is vital to the customer experience, and people are able to delight other people. Bots really hardly ever will delight a customer. I want a cobot. I don't want a robot, but I want a little cobot that does all the boring stuff that I need to do every day, and take over these tasks. Robots won't take over job. They will take over tasks. And together with a human, they can create a seamless end-to-end customer experience and work experience. So it augments our work, but doesn't replace our work. When you do use a digital and automated service, be clear about it. Don't let technology pretend to be something it is. Give customers an option. You can speak to a chatbot now, or I've got a person available who can talk to you in 2 minutes, or in 3 minutes you can speak to someone on the phone. You choose. But don't pretend they're speaking to a person when they're talking to a bot. And when you personalize, it came up, of course, people do quite like personalization. Don't be creepy. Use data that customers have voluntarily given you to personalize their experience with you. Don't use data that you have found out through all your web analysis, social media analysis, etc. Customers will find that creepy, and they'll be scared off. And trust is hard to earn and easy to lose. We're all under the microscope all the time, so make sure that whatever business decisions you make, they're ethically sound, because you get punished if you don't. And finally, engage the workforce. When you do implement robotics, they are worried about their jobs. They think their jobs are going to disappear. So engage the workforce, highlight the importance of the human interaction, of the emotional intelligence as well. The English Tax Office, HMRC, when they started their AI and automation project, they actually asked their employees, what part of your job could we automate? And they got hundreds of recommendations from people, because they actually saw an opportunity to spend more time on the more challenging work that they could do, but let the bots take over the simple jobs. So just to conclude with Professor Woodhuysen, there will be a major shift, and AI and bots are here to stay, and it will change the way we work, and that's great. But it's us who decide where this is going to be. It's not technology driving us. It's us deciding where it's culturally desirable, and where it's desirable in terms of customer experience and worker experience, where you want to use it. So I don't think the world is going to look like iRobots. I don't think they're going to take over our world. I think we're all going to have cobots. It might not look like this, but in the workplace, I think we'll all be assisted by technology to be more effective and more efficient in our roles. Now, very quickly, because I realize we're running out of time, we have a full research report available on this in German. I realize I've gone very fast. You will be sent an email with this link as well, but you can go to this webpage. There is a webinar available with Professor James Woodhuysen, so you can also watch that or share that with your colleagues. But more importantly, you can actually download the research white paper, which might be useful for you in your daily work. And finally, we have our customer conference in Germany on the 13th of September. So if your organization uses our technology, you should have had an invitation, but if you haven't, please drop me a line, and we're more than happy to send an invitation to you. Here are my contact details. Would love to connect with you. I'm on LinkedIn, on Twitter. If you have any questions about the research, drop me a line. And then with all that, I think we're a few minutes over. So I'm going to wrap it up now and hand you back over to your moderator and let you get back on with your day.